Welcome to Voices of Women. I'm Chris Stanis, your host, and also the founder of Women of Wisdom Foundation. We have been putting on amazing conferences for women since 1993. So we are in our 29th year, and our conference this year is on March 11th through the 14th, and it is going to be virtual for the very first time. So anybody around the world can participate in our conference, which has been life-changing for many, many, many women. And so I invite you to join us. You can find everything out at our website, womenofwisdom.org. So today I am interviewing one of our workshop presenters, Heidi Thompson. Heidi is the founder of Sacred Soul Gathering of Women, honoring many spiritual traditions at retreats and online gatherings. She's also the founder of HP Thompson Company, a Baltimore-based PC software training and development firm. She has 35 years of experience in teaching people to overcome their fear of computer technology. Heidi brings a wealth of knowledge, interesting insights, and a simple problem-solving approach to the process of transforming fear into peace. She's an adjunct faculty at Johns Hopkins University, has an MAS from Johns Hopkins University and a BS from Bridgewater College. She has designed and presented hundreds of workshops since 1985, and she's going to be presenting a workshop on Friday morning, March 12th. It's called The Empowering Gifts of Fear and Uncertainty, Making Peace with Fear. So welcome, Heidi.
Thank you. Thank you for that great introduction, and thank you so much for including me in your gathering this year. I know it's been an impactful gathering for many years.
Well, we're so glad to have you and to bring the East Coast with you.
Yes, this is great to bridge that East-West, to build a bridge between the East and the West. So thank you.
Yes, so let's just quickly, maybe you can share how your career field of computer technology shifted to become a teacher about fear and peace and all that.
Well, it's one of those interesting stories that some days you wake up and you have no idea that a good friend is going to say something to you that will transform your life forever. And in the most simplest set of circumstances, I was talking with a very good friend and we were talking about what was going on. And she says, I've got to go, but before I go, I just want to say, I think you're afraid. And then she hung up the phone. And I was quite annoyed by what she had just said because I thought you can call me many things, but not afraid. And of course, that immediately led me to go and look inside and say, so why is she saying this? What is it that I'm afraid of? And I discovered that. And in the process, I discovered that at that point, I'd been teaching computer technology for, I think, 17, 18 years, that what I had really been doing was leading people on a path from their fear of technology, which has been really one of the cultural fears that we have lived through in this time, to really a place of peace and enthusiasm about technology. And it was post 9/11, and I was struck by the amount of fear mongering that was going on. And one day I sort of had this visceral reaction: if someone doesn't start teaching us about fear, it is going to bury us as a nation. And that was 18 years ago. And I've been teaching about fear and peace and anger and conflict and all of the other things that fall into that ever since.
Yes, and we're still in that place here, and particularly right now. It's for people listening, this is just between the Capitol Hill riots and the inauguration. And so we're in the midst of it. And I think many of us are just working on like calming ourselves down, calming other people down, and because even, so that as we do that, we don't escalate the fear, because what happens inside goes outside too. That yeah, I just feel like that's our role to do personally, is to work on our own fears and be calm about it, to put that energy out there. So yeah, the relationship between fear and peace, because you talk about that, and you just mentioned that.
So the relationship between fear and peace. So first off, it's interesting because people will say, so what are you doing now? Because I've worked for myself for 35, 36 years. And it's like, well, I'm still doing software teaching. It's just a different type of software. So I started out teaching Microsoft Office and software like that. And I've come to see life as hardware and software. So with computers, the hardware is the computer box, and the software is what's inside of it. And it's the software that really gives the power to the computer. And if you think about life in much the same way, our bodies, the houses we live in, the food that we eat, all of that is really the hardware aspect of life. And the software side of life is those aspects that we can't touch or feel, but we know are very real. Things like our thoughts, our emotions, our imagination and creativity, prayers, healing, energy, all of those things. And so to me, anger and fear and peace fall into the category of the software side of life. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it is it's such a real experience as a human being. And yet it is something that we're not taught about at all. You just don't in school have a course that talks to you about how to what your emotions mean to you. And so as I've been with this, and I've been with the notion of fear, and how I came to associate it with peace is that I was doing a deep dive when the friend said to me, so why are you so afraid? I decided I'd better take a good look at fear and my relationship with it. And I overheard someone on a radio station say, I believe that peace is the opposite of fear. And I thought, well, isn't that an interesting idea? And I went inside and did a real study and look at it. And I determined that, yes, I agree that fear and peace are opposites. And the reason and how I got to that is that if you look at fear and you begin to peel back the layers. So I'm afraid of snakes. So why is it that I'm really afraid of snakes? Well, it's because I'm afraid they're going to hurt me. And then I'm afraid that if I get a bite, I'm going to die. So at the root of that is this fear that I am not going to be okay. Or if I'm afraid of a job interview, at the root of that may be the fear that I am not okay, that there is something inherently wrong with me. And when I stop to think about that, if that's what's at the root of all of our fear, then what is the opposite of that? The opposite of that is living from a place where I feel that I am okay, that as a human being, that I have great worth and a lot to contribute, and that this trust in myself and trust in life, that I am here to live a long life that is going to be meaningful. And so I'm going to trust that I will be okay as I live that life. And so for that, for me, it became a way of looking at peace, a sense that I am okay, I will be okay. It's not that there's not a lot of all of this going on. It's not that life isn't incredibly busy, but it's that within myself, I'm coming from a place where I feel okay. So if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, and and I also tie this into like anxiety, and I think it's what a lot the feelings of right now, the anxiety of what's going to happen, how it's going to change our world, how it's going to change our country, and so can you give us an example, a tip for people how they can minimize anxiety?
Absolutely. I think the first thing, and this is the first thing that I really introduce when I teach about fear, is that an anxiety to me, I call a flavor of fear. So it is just one of the ways that fear is expressed in us and in the world. And it is something that we are meant to experience. That anxiety and fear, there is nothing wrong with experiencing anxiety and fear. In fact, if we never experience it, we would not really be healthy human beings. And so the first thing is to just acknowledge and say, okay, this is here for a reason. And that it comes with a message. I oftentimes will say, when you're using your computer and you go to print, and you get a message on the screen that says, well, if you don't turn your printer on, you're never going to print. Well, what do we do with that message? We turn on our printer and we go and print. Well, anxiety and fear that comes to us with a message. I've been taught so often that there's something wrong with us if we're anxious, or there's anxiety is an enemy, or it is something that we should not experience. The first thing we do is we sort of tighten up and be like, well, what's wrong with me? Rather than turning in and saying, okay, anxiety, you are a friend, you've showed up as a friend. What is the message that you've come? And so I think that's the first thing, is to just really relax into it and to turn towards it and to say, okay, this is normal. I'm okay. what is the message here that I can glean from this? And sometimes the message is that there's a danger afoot, and there is something that we need to do to protect ourselves from this danger. And other times it's just a sense of other people's fear that we have caught. Fear is very contagious, and there
Yeah.
is so much in the world, and a lot of what we're feeling is just it's because everybody else is experiencing it. And if we can go and recognize it for that and say, okay, well, I want to live from a place of peace, that and is how you were so eloquently saying just a few minutes ago, Chris, is that what we put into the world, that is what creates the world. And so if we can live from a place of peace, then what we are doing is spreading peace. And that is helping to diminish the fear that is just running rampant right now. And so I think that those are going to be some of the important things, important tips that I can make.
Right. And just ask the question to fear. Ask fear the question, why are you here? Or the anxiety.
Exactly.
It's very uncomfortable to feel anxiety or to feel fear, and you call it as a divine gift. And, it's a gift because we're going to learn something about ourselves, I imagine, is what you're teaching, that we learn, what did this fear come from? It may not even, like you said, may not be ours. It might be passed down from our parents.
Precisely, that generational, what we inherit and what we come to this earth with. And the other, fear can mean there is a real danger afoot, and you need to examine the danger and then decide how, excuse me, how to react appropriately. The other big message that fear brings with it is that there is some change afoot in our lives, and life is calling us to do something, to take a turn that we're not expecting. And so it's really when we walk up to the fear, and especially, I remember one time I had a job interview and I was so terrified. I got to within this close of just calling and saying, I'm done. I'm done. And it was the first interview I had to be a college professor, which is what I have spent 36 years of my life doing, at least on a part time basis. And it changed my life forever. And so there was, I think, subconsciously, there were parts of me that were terrified. And yet I chose to walk up to that fear. And what happened doing that was it opened a door that I could have never imagined. And that's another message that I try to give people. And once it's interesting when we come together in a circle and begin talking, the stories that other people begin to share. It's like, and I've never seen it that way. Oh, thank you for showing me that that was the truth of that.
Right, right. And something I learned a long time ago, I think I was in a therapy group, was our therapist had told us the feeling of fear is very similar to the feeling of excitement. And that has lived with me forever, because I can go, oh, I could either, I can turn that fear into excitement.
Yes. Yes.
And because it's very similar. And then because that fear is just like you said, that the fear of your interview to be something that you wanted to move into, to become a professor. And the fear is like, you won't make it, you won't get the interview, but you can turn that around to excitement, like, oh, the possibilities here, I'm going to be hired, I'm going to become a professor, and turn it into excitement. You go into that interview with a whole different energy.
Exactly. Exactly. And one of the quotes I use a number of quotes that really become the foundation of my teaching, because I believe words are very powerful. And with words, we really create. But one of them comes from Bruce Lipton, who says that life is how we perceive it. And so, do we perceive that feeling, that anxious feeling within us, as excitement, or do we perceive it as an enemy that's come to really stop us or block us? And I think what happens, and I see this a lot in the world today, is because people do not have a clear understanding of what fear is in the world and what it means to us, that they don't turn towards it. And when you don't turn towards it and acknowledge it, it literally can physiologically take over your body and your thinking and the way that you respond in the world. And I see people who are responding in ways that if they really stop to think about it, I don't think would be doing some of the things that they are doing. And it is simply because when we become just overwhelmed by this fear, we just start doing things and we are not thinking. And that's one of the things that I talk about in my workshop is the biological, the physiological, the psychological ways that fear shows up and can actually begin to control us instead of our walking with it and really befriending it.
Yeah, so true. And I imagine too, it affects your physicality and your health. Um, and to change those, I mean, it goes into your cellular structure, I would think. So you just change those thoughts to peace and calm yourself, calms down your cells and calms down your body and your physical, to maintain good health in all aspects, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I know in your workshop, you're going to be giving people a lot of tools, and we always have, we'll have the breakout rooms where people can get into discussions and work things through. And I'm sure you're going to, you already shared a couple things for people to do. And we've just been going through a year of this pandemic. And I imagine you have been probably working with a lot of people to help them with that fear. It's a real fear, but it's, I would imagine it's like, well, how do you prepare yourself? How do you best take care of yourself? What precautions do you take? Instead of going into the fear, work through what you can do to protect yourself.
Precisely, precisely. And it begins by acknowledging the fear and then exploring what do you see around you? What do you feel within you? What is it that you notice? I have this 4-step process that you can go through. And the first is acknowledge, and then to ask the question, to ask fear, why are you here? But to also ask what else is happening in your life. And then another step would be to assemble an answer. So with the case of the pandemic, when it first arrived, I turned towards that fear immediately. And I began looking at all the sources that I could find for what is going on here and how can I protect myself. And I assembled an answer, is what I call it. And I began to roll out a plan. And as I did that, and what happens when we begin to act on our own behalf, physiologically, our body begins to automatically calm down. That part of the reason that fear gets control of us is because we have a sense that we have no control. Somebody says all of this is going on and there's nothing you can do about it. And we feel out of control. And that just kicks the fear into high gear.
Right.
When you can turn towards it and say, okay, what are the things that I can do? How can I take care of myself and those that I love? And just asking the question, just making a plan, assessing the risk, and then taking action, that all of that allows you to biologically, physiologically, to just change the cell structure and what's going on in your bodies. And the other part that I want to really emphasize is being a part of supportive community, especially where people recognize and are not afraid to face the fear. And so that's one of the things that in every workshop that I teach, we create a very, very safe space where very quickly we get into this safe container where we begin to bring our own fears and to share them and our own stories. And it's incredible in a 2-hour time period how people change. And so that becomes, and I think walking with fear is how we create that safe place. People tend to think that safety is when there are no guns and there's no viruses and whatever. That is not what safety is about. Safety is how we approach our lives, the trust that we have in our own inner knowing, and that's the very spiritual, soulful grounding that we live from, as well as the trust that we have in the sacred nature of all of life. And so we examine that aspect of it in a very real way. And it's a safe space where we can share all of our beliefs and all of our perspectives. And I think just in doing that, that we come away with a very different sense of the world and ourselves and our place in it.
Well, we're so excited to have you at the conference because it's such an important topic right now. It has really been a part of our year. And I think we had such a relief going from 2020 to 21 and now realizing, well, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. And and life, this is life. I mean, we have to face these things all the time. They change the flavor, they change different times in our life. It's different things, but it seems, it's kind of like there always will be something that we have to deal with in our life. And so great tools that you're going to be giving us. And it's, we create a community, a safe community. And so to bring this to Women of Wisdom is a great place for this workshop to be. And people can connect with other people and, share their fears and everybody share how they deal with it, and people learn from each other. And that's what Women of Wisdom is all about, creating the community. So it's so perfect to be part of our conference.
Well, I am just really thrilled. And to let everyone know, we will be doing breakouts, and you will have the opportunity to actually be with and to look at and examine one of your own fears, and then again share it and to really and then to use the tools that I'm going to be sharing. Mm-hmm. So when you walk away, not only will you have been exposed to them, you will have a chance to apply them and to listen to others as they apply them. And I think that that's how we all gain and we move forward, that there's something that we share when we come together in circle. And I think that as we do this, we are constantly creating the world. One of the things that's become so clear to me this year, I used to think I want to be a part of changing the world. And it's like, well, I do that every day. Each one of us does that every day. And it's what is the intention that we're using? So to gather with the intention and to have the gathering that you are sponsoring with the intention of really allowing us to come together and move not just our own lives forward, but all of humanity. I'm so supportive of that and the work that you have been doing for many years, Chris. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, and I just want to point out that it is done in a safe container, that our workshops, like, I think there's a lot of fear in sharing our fears sometimes because of shame and guilt. And it's such a release to share that with, and there will be small groups. And so you can do it in a safe place. And we create that container because in sharing, speaking them out loud releases that shame and the guilt. And you realize that others feel the same way as you. Other people are going through it. And then that's, oh, wow, I'm not the only one. And that's an important thing to realize. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Heidi.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Chris. And one more word I'm going to leave with this is I'm amazed at how many women at the end will say, I feel so much freer. That freedom is really a word that comes to it. So that's just another word. But thank you so much. And I really look forward to being a part of your gathering.
Okay, great. So do you have a website for people to...
I do. I have a website, and I'll give you an email address if someone wants to contact me directly. So my website is called softwaresideoflife.com. So the 4 words, softwaresideoflife.com. And you can reach me via email at sacredsoulgathering@gmail.com.
Okay, great. And everybody can check out Heidi's event and all the other events at our website at womenofwisdom.org. So thank you so much, and we'll be back again with more shows.
Thank you so much, Chris.